The main opposition party of Maldives, the Maldivian Democratic Party or the MDP, which holds a majority in the parliament, is all set to file an impeachment motion against President Mohamed Muizzu. This comes just a day after violence erupted in the Maldives parliament as MPs from the pro-government parties, the People's National Congress and the Progressive Party of Maldives disrupted proceedings and confronted the speaker. A total of 34 members from both the MDP and the Democrats have expressed their support for the motion to impeach the president. The protests erupted after the main opposition party opted to withhold approval for 4 members of Muizzu's cabinet. Protesters voiced concerns that the rejection of the ministers could impede progress and called for the resignation of the speaker. The scuffle that broke out led to injuries to one of the MP's heads, and minority leader Moosa Siraj had to intervene to stop the scuffle. Some of these videos have been going viral since yesterday on the internet, where literally it seems like a scene out of WWE taking place inside the Maldives Parliament. We take this conversation forward with Ambassador Veena Sikri. I also have with me Professor Madhav Nalapat, and we also have with us Joyita Basu. Let me begin with Ambassador Sikri. Ambassador Sikri, what do you make of the latest developments taking place in the Maldives, ma'am? The fact that these absolutely horrific visuals have come out of members of parliament literally at each other's throats, punching one another, hitting one another. What does this now really say about the state that the country is in?
Yes, it is. Those were horrific scenes. The parliament seemed more like an akhada than actually a very dignified and solemn place. Now, clearly, there is a standoff, complete standoff between President Muizzu and the 2 other parties, the MDP and the Democrats led by Nasheed. They have joined hands, and it's a complete standoff. The issue that led to this struggle on the floor of Parliament was that President Muizzu had to get his ministers nominated, the nomination of his ministers approved by the parliament, and I think the members of the MDP and the Democrats opposed 4 names. And at that time, President Muizzu's supporters thought that they could force it through by violence, and his very undignified scenes of punching people and pushing them down to the ground and jumping on them, unbelievable. So it's a complete standoff now, and in response to that, 2 things have happened. The MDP and the Democrats, that means the opposition party of President Solih, who was till recently the president, and the Democrat led by Nasheed, they have garnered about 34 signatures, which they say is enough to call for the impeachment of President Muizzu. And separately, these 2 parties together, the MDP and the Democrats, have also issued a statement saying quite clearly that they do not accept President Muizzu's foreign policy, and they feel that you cannot alienate a country, an ally which has been a long-term partner and a good friend of Maldives in its development, and they feel that alienating such a country, they have not mentioned anybody by name, would not be in the long-term interest of Maldives. So I think that it is very clear now that President Muizzu's sudden swerve, his pro-China policies, his rushing off to China, his signing 20 agreements covering a whole range of activities, now he's asking India to have her small contingent of people who are operating the very important and lifeline service between islands to save people, to bring them to hospital, to get them treatment. All these people should go. This is not met with the support of the people of Maldives. And the important, interesting point is that there are elections coming up in March to this very parliament, to this very majlis. And, obviously each side is jockeying to see that their people get elected. The fact that President Muizzu lost the mayoral elections of Male, 40% of Male lives in, the 40% of Maldives lives in Male, in the capital city. And President Muizzu was the mayor of Male day before he stepped down for becoming president. And this post he has lost. It's a big blow to him. It's an indication of what might well happen in the parliamentary elections due in March. So it's a tense time. The feeling of the people of Maldives is coming out very clearly against President Muizzu's staunchly pro-China line, against President Muizzu's India out line, and they don't want this. You've got the all-important Maldives Tourist Industry Association coming out saying they want more people from India. They want India to continue its dominant role in the tourism industry. They feel very comfortable with tourists coming from India, and India was a lifeline for Maldives during COVID, when Indian film stars and well-known figures kept the Maldives tourism industry alive with their presence, with their frequent visits. So it's a strong demonstration that President Muizzu's policies do not at the moment have widespread acceptance among the people of Maldives.
But Ambassador Sikri, is all of this then happening simply because of the anti-India stance that has been taken by Muizzu, or is there more as to why the opposition is now wanting to impeach this man within a month of him becoming president?
Well, the terms of the impeachment will be laid out. They'll have to, put it in a case. It'll have to be stated why they are impeaching him. But I think that, popular unrest, popular dissatisfaction with the sudden change in line by President Muizzu, this will reflect itself in support for the motion of impeachment. Now, if there is support for the motion of impeachment, then and the numbers are with the MDP and the Democrats together, then there is no alternative for President Muizzu except to step down. So I think it's a combination of many factors. They will certainly raise many elements, I'm sure, in the case for impeachment. There must be facts and figures that they know, accusations that they will be making. I would not like to speculate on that, but the numbers are the key point. And if there is popular support for that impeachment, they say they have the numbers, they say the impeachment will go through, and this element of popular support seems to be building up, because the MDP and the Democrats together certainly command a distinct majority in parliament and perhaps among the people of Maldives. Must remember that former President Ibrahim Solih got 46% of the vote. So it was a very, very narrow victory for President Muizzu. So I think this is the key factor now. Where is the mood of the people and what are the numbers in Parliament?
Okay, I'll come to you in just a moment, ma'am. Professor Madhav Nalapath, just understanding your perspective as well, sir, of what's happening in Maldives. This man came on a campaign called India Out. He was clearly voted to power by the people of Maldives. A lot of times it has been said that the level of radicalization in the Maldives is so high that the India Out campaign actually did work in Muizzu's favor. But the bottom line is that the man was then elected to power by the people of Maldives. Now when he's come to power and he's implementing the India Out campaign, as we can see, what do you think really has changed then? Is there something that has changed amidst the public, which is being reflected by the opposition leaders of Maldives, or is it the opposition itself which is now trying to perhaps in some way or the other hope that there's one wrong move and it's just Muizzu's downfall after that?
I've got access to a team of researchers who are capable of doing very good research into various trouble spots across the world, and they have come up with some disturbing findings. The first regards the funding of several key elements who are supporters of Muizzu, where this funding is coming from. Now, you'll recall that on this channel itself, I've been talking for many years about the Sino-Wahhabi alliance, the alliance of the Chinese Communist Party and extremist radicals in the Wahhabi International. And if the funding of some of these people close to Muizzu is tracked, I can assure you that it is going to be a great shock to the people of the Maldives. It is an extremely well-funded campaign. At the same time, a lot of bots and a lot of AI inspired images were used to basically demonize the opposition, to try and create an impression that this is an opposition that is fractured, unable to rule, etc., and super demonize, hyper demonize India. Now, this is a very sophisticated operation, and certainly Muizzu or anybody in the Maldives would not have been in this operation. My researchers, I was aghast at the way it reminds me of the Hamas operation against Israel, which again was superbly planned, superbly done, and obviously with outside help. So the first is the funding. The second thing is, Devika, this doesn't remind me of any wrestling akhada. That's a harmless thing. This reminds me of the Nazi party takeover of Germany. When the Nazi party never had a majority in a free election in Germany, but then when they entered the Reichstag in strength, they physically beat up the opposition. Now we are talking about MPs fighting each other. Please, these are the key supporters of Muizzu, battering those who are saying, no, President Muizzu, you are not good for the Maldives. It's not MPs fighting each other. It is one particular hardline group within the very hardline Muizzu faction that is using physical violence, intimidation and terror to basically batter the opposition. And the most disturbing facet that we have discovered, Devika, and as I said, frankly, a lot of things that have been said have been given to me by my research team. When I say it out loud, people don't believe it, and then when it comes true, they all start repeating it, forgetting where it came from. The danger is that what Muizzu, I think, is planning is to have a military presence of a certain hostile country. Now, that hostile country, we know what it is. It is China. The Solomon Islands already is now teeming with Chinese military. Teeming with Chinese military. Muizzu is, from what my researchers tell me, wanting to ensure that the Indian military is removed and the Chinese military comes, so that even if the opposition gets 90% of the vote, and of course they're not going to be allowed to declare that election with the Chinese military around, even if that is declared, they will not be able to come to power because of the Chinese military. And you and I know, Devika, the great commitment of the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese military to democracy. So this is what Muizzu is planning. Basically replacing Indian troops with Chinese troops and then forming an overt dictatorship. And this, I think, inkling of this is what has brought these two bitter rivals together to confront him. And the point is very simple. The democracies, and I'd like to talk to, sleeping democracies, I call them, like the United States, etc. India, of course, is not sleeping. India is very alert to this. I'd like to say that this is the game plan of the Sino-Wahhabi alliance. Muizzu, from all accounts, is playing exactly according to script that was given to me 3 weeks ago by the team of researchers I have access to, and Maldives is heading for dictatorship unless it can be succeeded in dethroning this kind of individual and replacing him with a truly democratic individual. Whether it comes through election or through a vote, I do not know, but the fact is he is playing for time to ensure, one, that the opposition is battered physically, and two, that Indian troops are replaced with Chinese troops in the Maldives, who can then prevent anybody else from coming to power.
Professor Nalapat, if that is the situation and scenario on the ground, as you say, that you have also learned from your own sources in the Maldives, what really then becomes the plan of action for countries such as India and, as you said, some of the sleeping democracies like the US? Because just a few months ago we heard a lot about the Quad. There was a lot of momentum that the Quad was gaining, but not much has happened since then as far as that particular alliance is concerned. When we talk about certain measures that have to rapidly be taken by the Quad in terms of securing the Indo-Pacific, what really then becomes the next step?
Well, I'd like to say that the Quad I mean, from a lot of declarations that have been made, believes in the concept of ahimsa, and ahimsa does not work if the other side doesn't believe in ahimsa. It becomes a one-way street. Maldives is a very critical part of the infrastructure security of the Indo-Pacific, a very critical part. The small number of Indian personnel there, they are vital to the security of the people of the Maldives. They are not there to threaten the Maldives. Indians in uniform have only intervened to protect democracy in the Maldives against precisely this kind of extremist dictatorship that now Muizzu has brought in, if I may say so. So I would like to say it's very, very important for democracies to come together. One, for the United States and other countries to track and trace the funding of Muizzu and his people, track, trace and expose the funding of Muizzu and his people. And secondly, if I may say so, India must ensure that for the sake of the people of the Maldives, that the Maldives does not become an occupied country like the Solomon Islands is today, under a man called Sogavare, who is a complete sellout to the Chinese. Solomon Islands has become an occupied country. Australia, a Quad member, did nothing. United States did nothing. None of these two countries did anything. Today it's an occupied country, occupied by Chinese forces. Maldives must not follow that route.
Okay, Joyita, bringing into the conversation, you've heard what Ambassador Sikri and Professor Nalapad have had to say as far as Maldives is concerned. But if this is the reality, Joyita, that we face today, that China has somehow managed to put its own man in power, in place, at the top of the leadership in the Maldives, same question to you, what really then become the next logical steps?
Well, first of all, I think as Indians, we need to realize that, given that this man is facing a parliamentary election, given that he is already very unpopular, as we see from the recently held mayoral election, and Muizzu himself was the mayor of Malé, by the way, and in the recent the mayoral election, his party lost. So he has been pushed into a corner, and what he's basically trying to do is that, inflame passions by again bringing into this his anti-India stance to the forefront. What he was talking about, India out for a long time, and he's again kind of trying to paint India as a villain, because he is on very shaky grounds, as we know. He may not even last as president, because we know what happened in the parliament, and as we are discussing, the opposition is planning to has got enough votes to bring an impeachment move against him. So at the most, as a democratic country, country that does not flex its military muscle and all, so you see, we can at the most, at time like this, we can wait and watch. That is what I think, what can happen. But at the same time, I'm certain our line of communication with both sides of the divide are open, and I'm certain that they are talking, but a lot will also depend on how seriously anti-India Muizzu's own people are. Okay? Whether they can be brought over. Well, I don't think right now, because they are also heavily Islamist influenced people. But the only silver lining is that this man is losing his popularity by the day. Whatever he may be saying, the fact of the matter is that China can never replace India in terms of, number one, locational advantage India has. Think of, whenever you are talking about any natural disaster, which is the country that is right next to you? It is not China, it is India. China, say for example, God forbid, some kind of a disaster strikes Maldives, which is already sinking, by the way. So which country will come and help Maldives? Which country will be the first responder? It has to be India. Maldives does not have any other country. So, inviting that Chinese spy ship over there, apart from that, what he's also doing is that he's increasing the debt burden. China's, I think his country already under him, they already owe around over $1 billion dollars to China, and think of it in terms of a country whose economy size is somewhere in the range of 6 or 7 billion.
Yes.
Out of that, you have got $1.3 billion just you owe that to China. And what is China's actual phase? China comes in with some kind of a humanitarian phase, but sooner or later, what it does is that its fangs are out. Now, Maldives also is in a position, its economy is going to go belly up. We have already seen what has happened to Sri Lanka. We are seeing what is happening to Pakistan. But it seems that Mohamed Muizzu and his party, they are not interested in what they want to, what Maldives should be about. Debt free, a kind of, because when you're looking at the assistance that India has provided to Maldives, that assistance has come without any strings attached.
Yes.
Now, we can say that about China. So, if he does not recognize, it is his own people. I mean, right now we will see what happens in the parliamentary elections. Because as I said, the two elections have happened, his and then the mayoral election, and things are not okay. Let us see what happens in the parliamentary election. But the fact of the matter is that if he continues down this path, he just might lose his own power. And it all depends, how much can he possibly rule with military power.
Yes, but Jyota, it does beg us to ask the question, like you said, that he is now, after coming to power, it seems as though he is losing some steam. He is not being able to continue the momentum with which he had come. But at the same time, it does beg us to ask the question, what basis then was there for Muizzu to come to power to the first place? How is it that he was able to tell the people of Maldives that, listen, I'm going to make sure that India is no longer being a bully or a big brother to us. I will come to power and I will ensure that there is prosperity. And he didn't, of course, during his campaign mention any particular country that he will be aligning with. So do you feel that after he's come to power and there has been a realization that the Chinese tentacle is going deep within the roots of Maldives, is that what has resulted in his now growing, unpopularity in the island nation?
Well, I don't think people really realize what the Chinese are up to, or what, I don't think that realization has percolated down to the ground, because once it percolates to the ground, it will percolate down when Maldivian economy goes belly up, and it will go belly up sooner than later. Once the people start getting hit, only then they will realize what Muizzu has done. But I think, it was kind of a, let's face it, there's a very strong Wahhabi influence, as Professor Nalapat also talked about. There's a very strong Wahhabi influence in Maldives. Maldives is the country that has been providing the highest per capita ISIS terrorists to ISIS. So you can understand the extent of radicalization that has taken place. I think, and of course, it goes without saying, there is some kind of a, even though India has 11%, India controls 11% of Maldives tourism market. In spite of that, there is a kind of resentment among this Islamist population. There is a large chunk of it. So it is these people who were hit, who kind of brought this guy to make him president. That is why I'm saying it's very important to see which way the parliamentary election works out. Because it is the travel industry, travel and tourism industry, which has got a lot of heft in that country, because that is their mainstay. So it is that industry that is getting hit. It is the business interests that are getting hit. So it is, I mean, if the change has to come, if the unhappiness with Muizzu is coming, it is stemming from there.
Okay. Ambassador Sikri, then I just want to understand from you as well, ma'am. Yes, a lot of times we say that we must wait and watch, but we have employed that strategy as far as Nepal was concerned, then Sri Lanka was concerned. To an extent, Bangladesh did not fall for that trap, but we were ready to wait and watch in that case as well. Yes, that could be a strategy that can be employed with the Maldives as well, but one says that you should strike when the iron's hot. Is there any way to then continue or perhaps provide any sort of support to this anti-Muizzu momentum that is there in the Maldives right now?
Well, there are two aspects here. First of all, certainly the group of people, the strong group of people, the MDP, the Democrats, others who are very much in favor of continuation of the old system, of continuation of India's presence, who see India's presence as a very sharp counter to the very strong Sino-Wahhabi influence that Professor Madhav Nalpat so correctly spoke about. And India's presence is the counter to that. So these people who are in favor of India are not, it's not a political thing that they're looking at, India versus China. They're seeing for the welfare of their own country, and they know that India's presence is very stabilizing. It does not allow any Wahhabi influence to increase. And India is the nearest country for them where you can get your medical treatment, your education, your bread and butter products and groceries and so on. So it's in every way a very important partner for them. So this is one aspect, and certainly this has to be built up, and it is for the people of Maldives for themselves to build up this feeling. And I'm glad that the MDP and the Democrats led by Nasheed, former President Nasheed, are doing this, are building up this feeling. This is very important. Coming to what you said about wait and watch, this is very important. India will not do anything in a hurry, but I think it is very important that red lines on security have to be conveyed at the appropriate moment, whether it is now, whether it is after the elections. It depends on how the situation develops. There were some rumors flying in the air that, the civil aviation contingent and the Air Force and Army contingent that India has, maybe Pakistan will be asked to come in with their people. So, there are all kinds of rumors flying thick and fast in the Maldives. And certainly India is watching it very carefully. If India's security concerns are at all affected, I think India should not hesitate. I think India will not hesitate to draw this red line sharply and say no more. We will not allow this to happen. And this, I think, is a situation that could approach in Maldives earlier than we think, because if President Muizzu has any anticipation of being impeached and the numbers are in favor of his being impeached, then he will resort to any kind of step to stay in power. We know that the concern of other countries on this issue is mounting. There was news that the American government, who so far did not have a resident ambassador in the Maldives, is now hastening to send somebody as a resident ambassador there. They do realize the situation is very critical. We do know that this ship that is approaching Maldives has stated that, yes, the ship is going to dock. The Chinese research vessel is going to dock in Maldives, but they said that they will not be doing any research in the Maldives waters or in the Maldives economic zone, which is known to be completely wrong and incorrect, because they do research as they go along all the way. It's not that they're going to wait to leave Maldives' very, very extensive economic zone to start any kind of research activity. So this is the very visit of this Chinese research vessel, which earlier was going to stop in Sri Lanka, but the Sri Lankan president has decided that there'll be a 1-year moratorium on any visits by any Chinese research vessels of this kind. So now they're stopping in the Maldives. Let us see what happens around that, and whether this is going to be allowed to go ahead or not. There's a lot of anxiety among the people that this should not happen. They do not want Maldives to be, this center of Chinese military activity, which not only affects the interests of India, but also affects their own security interests as they see it. And they look at continuing prosperity and development. The Sino-Wahhabi alliance, the Wahhabism that you see increasingly in Maldives is something that concerns a lot of the people of Maldives themselves, because along with this Wahhabism, you see a lot of drugs coming into the Maldives, a lot of young people being influenced by drugs. And the combination of drugs and the Wahhabi influence has made Maldives into a very, very difficult and very unstable, insecure kind of a society where, the women are taking a very big role in this against the drug menace, against Wahhabism. There is a strong, women's movement which wants economic development, which wants freedom for the women to work and join the labor force. They're already very dynamic and very active. So there are a lot of forces at work. But let me say that the bottom line very clearly is that India's security interests should not be affected. And if there is any imminence of India's security interests being affected, India will have to draw the red line and make it quite clear that there is no beyond this.
Professor Nalapat, I leave the last word with you, sir. When we talk about drawing the red line, what could that possibly mean in realistic terms? Because we wanted to draw that red line with, say, a Sri Lanka as well, but by the time we did, Hambantota Tota was already with China. As far as the Maldives is concerned, it seems as though she is at this point in time eyeing, as you said, military operations in the Maldives and specifically on the Lamo Atoll island of the Maldives to establish some sort of a military presence there. So when we talk about realistically drawing the red line, how does one do that? Because as we know, China is rather swift in its actions. So once it cozies up to a country, it's not like China is going to wait for the next 10 years to build or establish a relationship and only then move its military vessels. Within a month of Muizzu coming in, a so-called Chinese research vessel is already making its way to Malé.
Well, Hambantota, of course, is the ghost port, but the reality of the situation is, as you correctly said, that it is very concerning. And certainly the Chinese spy ship, if it is allowed to dock by the government of the Maldives, it is a hostile act. It's an unfriendly act. It would be construed as an act of hostility towards India and against Indian interests. Frankly, they're not interested in the Maldives. They're interested in India, and they're interested in the Quad, and the Quad and India specifically are the targets of this particular spy ship. So don't forget, Devika. I want to end by saying, all of us are assuming implicitly that President Muizzu is playing cricket, a gentleman's game. Muizzu is not a cricketer. Muizzu is a freestyle wrestler. He is not, there are no rules to his game. And all he is looking for is power for the sake of himself and those who are behind him. And I again repeat, look at the social media posts before the election. Look at the vicious nature of those posts. Look at the AI-inspired bots. And secondly, look at the funding for Muizzu's people, and then you will get the answer as to why Muizzu is being propped up by certain powers to do certain things. And I fully agree with the ambassador. India has red lines, and if Muizzu crosses that red line, for example, by welcoming a spy ship to spy on the Quad, spy on India, well then the inference is obvious that having this gentleman in the Maldives is very, very bad for the Maldivian people, who are a friendly people, very bad for the security of the Indo-Pacific. And the reality is that the world has to come together to ensure that the rules of democracy are followed in the Maldives, and that this freestyle wrestler is not allowed by force and by Chinese military muscle and by Wahhabi money to grab and to hold on to power in the way that he came to power, on the back of lies, propaganda, and an immense amount of funding from very dubious sources.
Absolutely. That's all the time that we have, but I thank all of our experts and panelists for joining us to take this very important conversation about a very close neighbor, the Maldives, forward. We will, of course, continue to track further developments.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.